Wonderful. Thank you, Aisha. Hello, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Thank you for joining Deloitte AI Institute Canada for today's panel discussion on artificial intelligence in aviation. By way of a very brief introduction, my name is Dejan Markovic. I lead Deloitte Aviation sector activities nationally, and I also hold a global role as global air and logistics leader for the firm. Before joining in Deloitte in 2019, I spent over 20 years in industry, focused on aviation, aerospace, and logistics. Today, I have the privilege of working with clients and colleagues from around the world in a sector fueled by the imagination and people with a passion for travel, transportation, and as we will hear from our panelists, technology. Now, before we begin, two things. First, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. We do acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of the lands that we are on today. Deloitte Canada has offices with representation across most of the country. We acknowledge that our offices reside on traditional, treaty, and unceded territories as part of Turtle Island, and is still home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Lastly, this webcast will be recorded and made available on Deloitte AI Institute's webpage. You will be able to view this video in the language of your preference. That said, let's begin with a sector intro and update. So the aviation sector is becoming leaner, faster, tech-enabled, and data-driven. In the face of these changes, customers are demanding more, and companies are looking to respond to the challenges of an increasingly multi-channel environment. Airlines, airports, PNSTs, service providers, logistics companies are all actively working to provide superior personalized experiences as their value proposition and differentiator. This has impacted the way many operate, and combined with post-pandemic recovery activity, help from technology will play a more material role than in years past. As it stands, aviation's recovery has in large part been a relatively good news story this past year. In the case of the passenger air sector, North American carriers had nearly 130% increase in traffic this September versus the year prior. Capacity increased on average over 60%, and load factor has crept up to support stronger profit levels, north of 80% in many cases. When we look at the cargo sector, activity continues to track near 2019 levels. North American carriers did, however, post a slight 6% decrease in cargo volumes this September compared to the same month last year. However, that isn't too surprising, as it comes after 2021's exceptional global cargo demand. Now, notwithstanding this slight contraction, capacity remains up modestly at about just over 4% compared to September 21. At the consumer level, with travel restrictions lifting, if not lifted in many parts of the world, we are seeing that people are more likely to spend on vacation travel and maybe a little less on their purchases. At the macro level, increasing recession warnings are likely to have a continued negative impact on the global flows of goods and services, balanced slightly by possible stabilization of oil prices. Against this backdrop, air cargo is holding up relatively well. Notwithstanding the positive narrative, full recovery is still ongoing, at least to fully reach and sustain pre-COVID levels. I highlight the significance of a sustained recovery in the aviation industry because Canada's economy can't afford a recovery that takes a decade or more. Recovery and resilience is vital to our country. I had estimated that aviation, including spending by foreign tourists, contributes over $63 billion to Canada's GDP. That's just over 3%. With 48 billion of that generated by the industry and its supply chain alone. Given aviation's dynamic environment and the rising demands in this space, there are various opportunities to stay competitive, which has prompted many aviation stakeholders to make strategic investment in expanding their operations and placing larger bets on tapping into how technology, namely AI, is used in the aviation sector. It is our view that stakeholders from government to industry need to reimagine the way they operate, as well as how they partner and collaborate. They must rally around a common vision of an aviation ecosystem that's resilient, thriving, and committed to achieving rapid and meaningful improvements, not just in their businesses, but specifically on sustainability and carbon emissions as well. And in taking action, we must be bold. Now is the time for innovation, ideas, and new approaches that will enable aviation to rebound better, stronger, and more sustainable and competitive than ever before. So what are the major paradigm shifts? What trends are we seeing? Well, AI and its subsets, machine learning and deep learning, have have found a wide array of applications in the industry, from ground handling services to airport screening and air traffic management, and there's absolutely scope for more. We have seen focus in segments such as intelligent maintenance and engineering and prognostics tools, demand forecasting, and now more focuses on customer preference and prediction to ultimately be more responsive to those needs. Machine learning can mine huge amounts of historical data to support human operators on the ground or in the air, so as to make the best possible decisions. Something like this is pivotal for aviation in the context of airspace capacity, which is rapidly running out in many parts of the world. Never mind the climate change crisis. Layer on top of that, new levels of complexity in the integration of what we're hearing and seeing in the proliferation of unmanned aircraft, and that on top of an already crowded airspace. By accelerating the optimization of trajectories, creating green routes, if you will, and increasing prediction accuracy, artificial intelligence can make a very big difference in mitigating the environmental impacts of aviation. The punchline here, the punchline in trends, is that AI's ability to identify patterns in complex real-world data that human and conventional computer analysis would probably struggle with, makes it extremely well suited for our aviation sector. So what can the new reality of air transport look like? If we agree that technology is drastically changing the way businesses connect with their customers, then we should agree that the world of aviation is part of that change too. Data and the way it is being used is transforming airlines, airports, ANSPs, other stakeholders from pre-flight and in-flight all the way to post-flight operations. Ticket purchasing, seat, meal, entertainment selection, to luggage tracking, and time and ground transportation for arrival. The data required needs to be captured along the various components of the journey, allowing organizations to take informed steps toward operational efficiency and improve the customer-centric approaches to their businesses. A few additional high-level examples. So baggage screening is an important task at any airport. Simplifying this process using AI-based technology to detect threats earlier offers less risk to manual verification. Personalizing not just the product and service, but the journey, and influencing both how and when customers engage is something that we're going to see in this new reality. By incorporating more upstream and downstream data, we can broaden the impact of the timing of someone or something's journey incrementally, and affect not only the commercial revenue aspect, but also streamlining operations of knowing when and where someone or something will be. AI technology will also make the process of passenger identification faster and easier. Security scanners and biometric identification with AI will also help with security personnel on duty to be more efficient. I'm particularly fond of leveraging AI and data computer vision in the video, the quick 20-second video that you saw there. And if we can click it again, that'd be wonderful. A technique that uses cameras and machine learning algorithms to monitor complex activities. So take for example this example, gate operations and ground servicing. We can detect safety issues and oversee efficiency in real time, or sound alarms when a service is taking longer than expected. The ability to combine AI-driven operational insights to possibly influence commercial pricing and yield is something to look to in the new reality. So I've only skimmed the surface with a few examples. For today's panel discussion, we will hear and discuss in greater detail how AI and aviation is being looked at. And just before we get to that, would love to get some calibration with our audience so that we balance out what we're asking, what you're going to hear, and ask you to be interactive with any questions. So if you please take a moment to place your vote on our poll question here. And the question is, as a traveler, where would you like to see the aviation sector prioritizing its AI and data activities? A, minimizing delays. B, reducing airport queues. C, lost baggage minimization. And D, personalized promotions. Team, I think this is a live exercise, right? So we should be able to see some live data. I see Audrey nodding. So this is the time where I'm going to fill in 10 or 15, 20 seconds with dead air while everyone's clicking on their mouse. Do encourage you to think of any questions. If you have some questions, there is the webinar chat. Please feel free to put them in there. We do want to hear from you. We wanted to make sure that we have a strong representation from across the ecosystem and folks that have had a lot of experience both in the air side, ground side, airport, airlines, air navigation, what have you. And we absolutely want to hear from you. So it looks like look at that. We're getting some good numbers in. I don't know if the total here, it looks like we're converging on, Audrey, it looks like we're converging on on a leader. I thought we were going to be honest, I would have lost my bet. I thought we would have been a little more spread out, but it looks like it's minimizing delays. Okay, not entirely surprising given some of the activity that we've had this past summer, so not entirely surprised. Good. So it looks like we're slowing down a bit with a relatively clear direction. Either way, this is a great calibration because the leaders that I'm about to introduce to you will absolutely have a perspective on this as well as the others. So first, it's my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Anki Yao, Senior Manager, Cargo AI and Transformation at Air Canada. She's been with Air Canada for over 22 years and has been involved in many commercial roles, including revenue management and pricing, before transitioning into technology initiatives. She was part of the team that started the Cargo Artificial Intelligence Program in 2019 and has been the head of the program since April of 2021. She is a great believer in using technology and AI to drive positive business outcomes. Welcome, Anki. Next up, we have Shavin Fernando, Manager, Advanced Analytics Products, NAV Canada. In his technology leadership role, he combines his education and experience in data analytics and AI with his interest in human-centric design. He leads a multidisciplinary team in the development of advanced analytics products. Shavin holds a double major degree in economics and political science from the University of Ottawa. He also holds a Master of Management Analytics from Queen Smith School of Business. And Shavin, if that wasn't underachieving enough, he also captained the football team at Ottawa. So welcome. Welcome to you as well. Our third panelist is Martin Bowman, National Transport Sector Leader from Deloitte in the United Kingdom. Martin is a seasoned and well-regarded industry professional who has spent nearly 20 years in aviation technology, working across airlines, airport, ANSPs to enhance industry collaboration and increase efficiency and effectiveness. Martin, good to see you again, old friend. Thank you for your time today. And finally, please meet Audrey Ancion. She is Deloitte's AI Institute leader and will be moderating this esteemed panel. So Audrey, the panel is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Dayan. Love the introduction, the trends you've been sharing, and love to hear from you about your passenger experience. That was quite interesting. Today, we've brought you representatives from the aviation ecosystem, air traffic controller. We're going to have Martin talk about airports, and Anki is going to represent an airline with Air Canada. What we're going to do is we're going to ask three set of questions. We're going to be focused on three themes today. First, I'm going to ask each of our panelists what AI, advanced analytics and data mean in the context of their aviation entity. What do they mean for an airport, for an airline, and for an air traffic controller? And then we'll talk about enablers and challenges. What is both difficult, but what is also helping the adoption of advanced analytics and AI in their space? And finally, we'll talk about the future. We'll ask each of our panelists about trends that we can expect in the future, applications we can expect in the future. So let's start with Air Canada Air Cargo. I was wondering, Anki, if you could describe the cargo business to our audience. Many of us are passengers, but not many of us may know how the cargo business works. I was wondering if you could talk about the impact of COVID also on the cargo business, and then define for us how you use machine learning and AI in the context of your work.
Sounds good. Thanks, Audrey. So a lot of you don't know it, but air cargo is really a critical part of the supply chain. If you look at the statistics from IATA, air cargo transports more than $6 trillion in the value of goods globally in the world. That represents 35% of global trade, but by value is less than 1% of the global trade in volume. Now, what this means is that air cargo is used to transport essentially very high value goods. It's also responsible for transporting many goods such as perishables that you purchase in the supermarket, such as asparagus or lobster. It was a key player in the transportation of vaccines and personal protective equipment, or PPE, such as masks and gloves during COVID. And for Air Canada, cargo is a core part of our business. In 2021, cargo generated $1.5 billion in revenues, or 23% of the total operating revenues. The importance of cargo to Air Canada was highlighted during COVID, where in 2021, we used our normally passenger aircraft and we flew over 10,000 cargo-only operations. And as a result, we've started our freighter program, where in 2021, we started operating our first 767 passenger to freighter converted freighter. Now, if we look at advanced analytics at Air Canada and at Air Canada Cargo and AI, it's really, we're there to look at solving a business problem. We are there to see what the problem is, if it can be solved by AI, and then we build solutions to solve the problem. Our role is to help improve the business using AI, whether it be to drive increased revenues, decrease costs, or improve processes. In terms of trends that we are seeing and other applications, we recently hosted our first Women in Data hackathon, and the event was focused on using augmented reality to take dimensions for freight. I see there's a lot of potential for this, and related to computer vision that Dehan spoke about, as it helps speed up processes. Today, it's really manual. We actually use a measuring tape to measure each piece individually, and it's very time consuming. Tomorrow, using augmented reality, we could measure multiple boxes with the click of a button. Another use case is related to our spot or our ad hoc pricing, our one-time pricing for our customers. The process is also very manual and qualitative. We're actually working on a solution that'll provide guidance to our sales team to provide the correct rate based on quantitative considerations.
Fantastic, Anki. Thanks for painting a picture of air cargo for us, its importance, and also talking about concrete applications of machine learning in your context. I would like to move it to NAV Canada and have you, Shavin, do the same for NAV Canada. Describe your organization's mission and where data, advanced analytics, and machine learning play a role.
Sure. I guess people are really jealous of the University of Ottawa football team, I guess. That's okay. In terms of what NAV Canada is and who we are, we're Canada's air navigation service provider. We are a private, not-for-profit organization. We control air traffic, provide advisory services for airports, weather briefings, aeronautical information. We control about 18 million square kilometers of airspace domestically and over the ocean as well. And we're recognized internationally for our safety record and technology innovation. I work in the Chief Technology Organization, and innovation is really key to what we do as a team. And we're really at the beginning of our AI journey. In 2022, we defined our data analytics and AI strategy. We also have a detailed AI strategy that we put together to help our people and customers. And 23 is all about focused on our operating model. In terms of the definition of what we mean for AI, it's really a tool for us. It's part of our technology-enabled future, where we see AI and people collaborating successfully within our business and operational units. We want to be able to impact positive ways of working to increase our companies and our people's abilities to be more resilient, predictable, and consistent. For us, we've segmented AI into 3 categories: assisted, augmented, and autonomous. And we're really focused in on assisted intelligence and decision support to our operational and business units. So, the poll was around delay minimization and impact to people. So one of our examples right now that we're working on is a weather forecasting tool, a product that helps us with airspace capacity and arrival departure demand delay minimization. Another tool that we're working on actively is our digital twin. So it's a virtual replication of Canada's airspace, quite a complex project to digitize the ATM environment. And the goal of that project is to help us understand what tomorrow's operation may look like using optimization, machine learning, simulation, what-if scenario modeling. So, our team has done a lot of work, complex work to get that organized and bring that concept to life. So, really good work by them. And, as we continue to expand our AI and ML teams, there will be opportunities to contribute to the Canadian aviation ecosystem in NAV Canada. So, if you're really interested in aviation, feel free to message me after this. But yeah, that's how we define AI for our organization, Audrey.
Thanks a lot, Shavin, and thank you and all your NAV Canada colleagues for keeping all of us safe in the air. I would like to turn it over to you, Martin. You have done incredible work with airports across the globe. And I was wondering, when you reflect on the most impressive and practical and valuable applications of AI and machine learning across airports, what comes to mind, and what can we expect from the use of technology? What are some of the value drivers?
Yeah, sure. And good afternoon, everyone, and greetings from the UK. I think when I've witnessed and been involved in analytics and prediction and data projects across the airport sector, the projects that have been the best are the ones that have fundamentally been built on the kind of core function of airports. And I've had that kind of core business lens to them. And I might be stating the obvious, but the core function of an airport is to get passengers and bags onto planes, preferably the same plane, and to get the plane to leave at the same time. And essentially to do that in a manner that doesn't annoy the passenger and doesn't frustrate them. Because if you do the bit that doesn't annoy them, then the chances are, once you're airside, you'll spend money. You know, let's not forget, I refer to airports as shopping malls without an exit. And that's the core economics of the airport industry. And where AI and analytics projects have been successful, they have recognized that fundamental dimension to the success of airports and the success of airport operations. So building on the point Anke was making, at the heart of any successful project is that very, very strong business lens to everything that we're doing within the industry. And in terms of the categories of initiatives which we typically focus in on when it comes to AI within the airport sector, I would split it into three areas: operational efficiency, I would split it into customer experience, customer satisfaction, and then I would also look at commercial opportunity. By far the most important one of those three is operational efficiency, because if you get that bit right, you know, the customer experience usually goes hand in hand with operational efficiency. And if the customer experience is positive, then that goes hand in hand with the likelihood to spend, which again works well for the airport. So you'll find there's of those three categories, there's a disproportionate emphasis on operational efficiency when it comes to AI and analytics within aviation. And there is a whole plethora of activity taking place right across the industry in terms of, some of the punctuality and the turnaround analytics example which Diane showed us earlier on in the video. But one of the things that I would comment on is often what you see as an initiative within an airport, you might actually not realise that there is actually AI sitting behind it. And a really good example of this, there's been a recent trend in the North American airports, probably heightened by some of the experiences we all felt as travellers during the summer this year, to offer this new facility called virtual queue. And I believe in Canada, I think it's Calgary, has recently launched this as a capability. And what virtual queue essentially allows you to do, it's a bit like when we go to a theme park. It allows you to pre-book your slot in the security process and actually get that kind of guaranteed time to go through security. And that, from a passenger perspective, that seems like quite a simple tool and quite a simple thing to be able to do. But actually, beneath the surface, there's a whole bunch of prediction and analytics going on around why they're doing that. What that tool essentially is, the means of pre-booking your security queue, is essentially peak smoothing. So the airport has basically predicted they're going to have an issue at a certain peak, and the level of demand is actually higher than the capacity that they have within the airport's infrastructure. So what they're doing is they're offering slots to basically smooth the peak out and move it out a bit. And as I say, there is a whole series of analytics, passenger prediction analytics, security lane optimization analytics that has allowed them to do so. So in summary, in our world, in the airport world, the lens is always on the business, it's always on the customer, it's always on the operation and the operation efficiency. And in my experience, if you focus on those are the key drivers for success within the airport industry.
Love it. Thank you, Martin. I think the three of you have described really, really well what AI apply and advanced analytics apply can lead to, improve passenger experience, operational efficiencies. We talked about resilience and also possibly helping with a greener future. So thanks to all of you for contributing your concrete examples. I wonder if we can switch with theme 2 to the how question. How do we get to these successes? What does it take? And Anki, you started by making sure we understand the importance to anchor what we do with advanced analytics and machine learning in a business problem. I wonder if beyond that necessity and foundation to make it a business problem or to use a business problem, are there other enablers that you were able to bring together at Air Cargo to deliver on these successes?
Well, I think in terms of enablers, it's really linked back to that business problem. What are the core business priorities? Having this in place will make sure that you have the right sponsorship and the right stakeholder engagement for success, both at the leadership level as well as the user level. And the second one is to make sure you have both the right technical framework as well as the right people resources. And when I say people resources, it's twofold. You have to make sure you have people who are able to provide that technical expertise, but on the flip side, you need to have you need to have business stakeholders who understand that link and can drive that vision to solve that business solution in a way that's usable.
Thanks for that, Anki. And I was hoping you could also talk about change management and adoption, right? A lot of the things we hear is, great, a model was produced and developed, but adoption was very low. Mm-hmm. Could you give us an example of a recent model you've built and how you were able to drive adoption, engagement, change management to make sure it would create value?
Definitely. I mean, we work with at Cargo and at Air Canada, there are a lot of frontline staff, and people feel that AI can be a threat to their jobs instead of an enabler. And at the end of the day, if we make an AI solution that people don't use, the solution has failed. So we've struggled a lot with change management. Initially, we started the program in 2019. We were just starting to roll out and COVID hit and we couldn't go into the stations. So to improve our outcomes, we put in a lot of governance, and a lot of it is around having a gating model where we had sign-offs with our business sponsors, our stakeholders, and our leadership across the group. For example, in 2020, we started implementing a solution basically equivalent to the check-in process at airports, but for cargo. And we started it in Vancouver, and it was very rocky. We didn't engage the stakeholders sufficiently, and it was very difficult for them. And all these measures we've put in place, we actually launched Montreal about a month ago, and with the leadership support, the implementation for the exact same solution has been very successful.
Great example. Thanks for sharing. Wonder, before I pass it over to Shavin for a similar question on enablers, any final words of wisdom, Anki, on success elements, things that you must have in place to be able to conduct machine learning and AI successfully in a business context?
Definitely. So I think the first that is, and I mentioned, is make sure that it's implementable in the business. If your team doesn't buy in at every level, you're not going to have a successful product. The second one is more technical, is making sure that the application is stable, that it's accessible at all times, and that the models are accurate. And the third, which is really a business measure, is making sure that you have quantitative measures of success and that you ensure that you're tracking to these measures to make sure that you're performing to what's being promised to the business.
Love those practical guidelines and reminders, Anki. Thank you so much. Shavin, let's turn it over to you. And at NAV Canada, what are some of the enablers that you're pulling to build the tools that you described earlier?
Sure thing. Yeah. I mean, foundational elements, I guess, I mean, vision, strategy, operating model, really critical. We're actively working on the operating model, but on the day-to-day, the focus is really on our people and data, which tie into our culture. I think the change management thing is a big thing, and we need to make sure people feel comfortable and confident in our data analytics and AI products, so they can make decisions. Historically, we used to get questions like, "What data source did you use? Why did you use that data source? How did you generate this recommendation?" So we realized pretty early on that we need to focus on a day-to-day basis with making sure that people understand we're connecting expert judgment and knowledge with additional data points to inform their decision-making process. AI is rooted in statistics and probabilities, and having a probabilistic mindset is very much needed when you're thinking about using some of these products in the field and in the business units as well. I see that on a daily basis. In the summer when I go golfing, it says 30% chance rain, 70% chance no rain, and then I go golf and it's raining. So sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. But you make the best decisions you can, and you go from there. In terms of another foundational element for us, enabler is really around data. We have developed and implemented our cloud enterprise data platform called Insights almost 2 years now, and we're really treating data as a product. It's not necessarily an outcome of a project or a nice to have from a new system or even an old system. It's very much a focus on data as a product, and we have billions of data points at NAV, and we put an emphasis on data governance and data as a product, so we can leverage those pieces for insights and AI product development. The third thing for us in terms of foundational is people and product. Our machine learning product development strategy is a work in progress, but we're in the cloud infrastructure right now, and we've been focused on DevOps, and now we're focused on DevSecOps. We know our tools need to be safe, resilient, and secure while minimizing our product lifecycle requirements. So our teams have done a great job on continuous learning to apply new skills in the cloud and properly integrate our ML flows into traditional software development principles. For example, our digital twin is an Azure Databricks, and they've done a really good job of automating. The team has automating the data and ML engineering pipelines and the workspaces to match our traditional CI/CD applications, continuous integration, continuous deployment application workflows. So, foundational elements, enabler, strategy, vision, business objectives need to align to the product. Personally, I really feel we need to be able to design and develop with human-centric design principles. We need cyber-safe products, and our data input and output really need to be easily understood. And quite simply, people need to trust what we're doing. So you need to give them insight in why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and what the outcomes may be. So those are foundational elements for analytics and AI at NAV.
Thanks for sharing those, Shav. On one of them, I'm just hearing a lot of clients talk about this, and I wonder if you have a perspective of how to change the mindset to a product one. What does it mean to lead data and analytics as products?
As products, I mean, they have to be readily accessible, readily available. You're actually developing something that people are going to use. So it has to be accessible, easy to mine, easy to use, and it could be through access to APIs or whatever it is. But it really needs to be front and center in the business case, and quantitative metrics tied to delivering that data to your cloud platform or on-prem database. Success factor for the project.
Thanks for those precisions. Martin, let's hear it from you. What do you see are perhaps challenges airports are facing in implementing some of the machine learning models and AI models we talked about?
Yeah, sure. And probably the biggest challenge around introducing an analytics or AI solution into the airport industry is the reality of the operation. Airports are ecosystems. An airport doesn't exist on its own. An airport exists with its airlines, and some airports have many airlines. It exists with its ground services operators. It exists with its ANSP, with its air traffic organisations. And the reality is that none of those players and none of those stakeholders can exist in isolation of each other. But also, the priorities and the focus and the business drivers for each are different, right? So that's the reality of working in the airport sector. And it's the same in airlines and the same in air traffic. So at our heart as an industry, we have to be collaborative. We have to, because we can't exist without collaborating with others. It just doesn't function. The industry doesn't function with that. But we also then have this challenge that, you know, what an airport is trying to do sometimes doesn't match with what an airline is trying to do. You sometimes have this mismatch in terms of priorities. So my kind of biggest enabler when working in that environment, what I always recommend to my clients to do is unite around a common enemy, right? Try and find a common sense of purpose, that it might not actually be the exact same business case, and it might not actually be the exact same value point to each of the stakeholders, but there's enough overlap between them that each of the parties involved in the collaboration is actually getting that value. And if you can build those kind of collaborative principles at the heart of what you're doing, that will set you up for success. And a really, really good example of that, and it was quite interesting when we did the poll at the start, that I think it was 55% odd of our respondents indicated that delay was their recommended focus area for AI within the aviation sector. That's great, because actually, as an industry, we hate delay, right? We really don't like it. But delay to an airline is different to delay to an ANSP, and it's different in turn to delay to an airport. An airport delay is about we're not maximising an infrastructure to the best of our ability. We can't land other aircraft because we've got an aircraft still on stand. You know, a delay to an airline is I make my money when my airplane is in the sky, right? So I need to be maximising that asset, having the airplane in the sky. And what data allows us to do is to basically remove the emotion from that conversation and basically put fact and put this common language at the heart of the collaboration. And that is such a powerful enabler for actually moving these initiatives forward. As I say to people, to quote the management consultant Deming, in God we trust, everyone else bring us data. And data is the key enabler for collaborative initiatives within the world of airports.
Fantastic! What a great quote, and a great reminder that we can use data as a common language, and love it if we can use it to fight a common enemy. Yes, we do hit those delays, and looking forward to some improvements there, further improvements, I should say. Thanks for all those points, Martin. Let's turn it over to our final theme, and this is also an opportunity for me to remind our audience that you can paste your questions in the chat or submit them as part of the Q&A. Any questions I may not have asked, feel free to post it in the chat. But I would love to hear now from our three panelists what their perspectives are on the future of aviation. Anki, let's start with you. What are your perspectives?
Sure. So I'll actually circle back with the on-time performance. So one of the labs that we're working on at Air Canada is to improve the on-time performance based on the schedule. So the intent is to model expected delays, misconnections, and costs given to a future schedule, and using these analytics and analysis of misconnections and try to reduce that over time. So it is very important to us as an airline to improve our OTP. Now, in terms of cargo, we want to and we will continue to develop and grow AI at Air Canada Cargo. Cargo as an industry remains very much paper-based and manual. So as well, the digital marketplaces are fairly new. There's a huge amount of opportunity across all functions, be it sales, operations, manpower management. We spoke about augmented reality. Dehan spoke about computer vision. So we see a ton of opportunities, and we'll continue to look to use AI to modernize, to drive revenues, and to create efficiencies.
Love that. Thanks, Anki. Shavin, your perspective on the future of use cases, applications in the aviation and and what it means for NAV Canada.
Sure, I'll talk about NAV first, I guess. So, I mean, success for us, and I see the question in the chat, I'll get to that after, but success for us, I mean, it's really, again, like I mentioned, treating data as a product and helping AI, or using AI to help our people with whatever problem they're trying to tackle. To Aggie's point, we want to be able to match our core business objectives with the right AI techniques and make sure we're doing that properly. And, we're growing, we're improving our abilities to apply theory and practice and, help our people out, both on the business side and the operations side. It's really critical that humans and AI can collaborate successfully. Martin's touched on that as well, and make sure that people can use AI to scale their work safely, especially with the growing traffic demands, other types of traffic like new entrants, drones, remotely piloted aircraft systems. We're seeing a lot more volatile weather conditions. So those are major factors that AI can help us with. And at the same time, we all need to make sure we're trying to minimize the environmental impact of service delivery. So quite the challenge, but we're up for it, and so is AI and machine learning. In terms of the broader industry, I think human-centered product design is really important, tying AI and ML algorithm development with product development and understanding how people collaborate with technology. Look no further than Siri. My smartphone's right here, Apple, and Siri knows what's up. She helps me with a lot of different things, assisting me, automating things for me. So, and I'm a big believer in human-machine collaboration. And for example, at NAV, we're really trying to implement design thinking principles when we develop our AI products. As an example, we're working right now with a third party to explore art of the possible with AI and adaptive learning to potentially help our training groups train air traffic controllers. It's a proof of concept. It's really us to try to develop reinforcement learning algorithms to provide anytime, anywhere learning and training assessments of performance. And the teams have gone through multiple rounds of ideation, prototyping, problem solving, et cetera, to understand that we're making sure we have the right solutions for the problems we're trying to solve and meeting the needs of the student, the instructor, the management team, as well as the project delivery team. And this type of product development really puts trust at the center of the development cycle and people in the middle of the development cycle as well. So it brings people together and it's more collaborative. AI's value is really driven by our ability to make sure that humans and machines, or humans and AI, can work together. And there's facilities and environments that they can do that, and they can collaborate and learn from each other. And that's really what I mean by human-machine collaboration, and why I think it's really important, not only for NAV, but the broader aviation sector. So the sector as a whole, Martin's points are bang on. We need to make sure we continue to collaborate, increase our partnerships, and work together to really create that seamless end-to-end experience to the flying public, because it is an ecosystem and everything is connected. The business success of AI is really going to be defined by its ability, or our ability, to provide value to the workforce, to the flying public, and our customers. And data analytics, AI, ML, they play a really large role in the sector. And I am really looking forward to actively building that future with our panelists and other people on this call. So that's what success looks like from my perspective, I guess.
Fantastic. Thanks for defining that for us, Shavin. And thank you to the attendees for submitting your questions. We got a few great ones. I was hoping, Martin, if you could help me answer Firas's question. So will we ever see AI used in air traffic management and flight operations, and not just analytics, especially with the rise of urban air mobility and uncrewed, unmanned aerial systems?
Yeah, sure. And great question. It depends to what extent do we mean AI in that environment. So, and I will need to segment my answer. So, do I ever think we will see core airspace aviation operational decisions being driven by AI? I do not see that anywhere near on the horizon. And the reason for that is a very, very fundamental reason. In aviation, the safety responsibility resides with the human making the decision. It's part of our regulatory setup. It's part of our regulatory environment. So the flight crew are legally responsible for the decisions that they are making. The ANSP, the air traffic controller, is legally responsible, and they are accountable for the decisions that they are making. I do not see that legal regulatory change happening anytime in the future that would enable us to move away from that, nor do I think I want that to happen, because I quite like that direct accountability link when I fly. I think that's quite an important relationship. That vested interest is something that gives me certain comfort. Do I think so? Where I see the relationship evolving and where I see tools being directly used within flight operations and aviation operations is what I'd refer to as human in the loop. So these are tools which we use to augment and to bolster the decision-making process by those individuals. And that is happening now. That is happening already. There are air traffic control organizations giving the people making the decisions advanced insights. There is really an interesting initiative in the US just now. One of the airlines is basically doing forward trajectory prediction and predicting what the FAA is likely to be instructions that are likely to be issuing to them, and then making dynamic adjustments to their flight plan literally on the fly. So there is already initiatives taking place where that advanced insight is being given to the individuals, but ultimately the individual, because of that safety accountability, needs to retain that authority and that legal responsibility.
Sounds good. Thanks, Martin, for highlighting the need for a human in the loop still, even though we're, not automating, but providing more and more decision support. We still want a human to make that decision for us. Thanks a lot. Anki, I was hoping you could help me answer Jun Lei's question. So Jun is curious to understand how important data collection is. So how important is it to understand customer behavior and needs to develop the AI systems that sort real-world problems? And how do you conduct data collection? What does the process look like? We would love your tips and tricks on data collection here, Anki.
Sure, and that's actually one of the most challenging pieces around building AI models is the lack of data or dirty data. So when you start, a lot of the data is manual. It's based on, and I'll use cargo as a context. I mentioned that everything's on paper. The data is only as good as the entry by the user. So as you build more AI, you collect more data, and it enables you to build even more AI solutions. So when you think about moving into the AI space, it's really important that you think strategically about the long term and what your long-term needs are. And we really try to do that. So when we first did the program, we actually collected much more data than we needed. So, and this could be data related to bookings, to behavior. And when we talk about behavior, it could be customer behavior or our own user behavior. And it's simple things such as how much time does someone spend on a screen, on a page? How much time is it taking for a certain decision? And that is really critical to understand how well your models are performing. And the second thing is to be used to create new models and new solutions around AI.
Thanks for that, Anki. Shavin, I think you have something to add on data collection too.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, which you just said, but synthetic data generation is something we're also exploring, and really early days. But looking at using synthetic data to train, using it as our training data, so we can develop our reinforcement learning algorithms. In that example I talked about, the adaptive learning proof of concept. It's essentially fake data that mimics the real world, and we want to leverage it because sometimes we don't have data that's available, or it's hard to parse or process, and it's biased based on previous action. So it's really something that we're looking at, and I know in the future will help us with our 3 strategic initiatives, specifically around airspace modernization and how we look to revisit our airspace structure. So it's a long-term project that takes a lot of research and collaboration and testing and evaluation. But I think synthetic data generation and simulation will really help us along the way in terms of avoiding any types of biases or data we don't even have to begin with.
Thanks for those points on synthetic data, Shavin. Martin, any additional points on data collection?
Yeah, when it comes to data collection, I would always start with the business mindset, and I would actually argue that you need to flip from the traditional AI approach of this is a big data problem to actually, this is a small data problem, right? And what I mean by that is if you focus on the business outcome and you focus on the performance goals that you're looking to achieve, your approach to data should be, well, what is the minimum data set that I need to be able to achieve those performance outcomes? Too often we get drowned in the plethora of data that's available to us. But if you adopt this mindset, well, it's a small data problem. What is the smallest amount of information that we can possibly leverage to enable us to achieve our performance goals? Then that will guide you in the path. The other point I would make on data collection, certainly when it comes to the world of, my world, the aviation world, don't get drunk on trying to solve the data problem internally, right? The likelihood is there is third-party data out there that can, if not fully solve your problem, at least get you somewhere. And I've worked on numerous projects across numerous airports across the world where we found the data was internally was of a poor quality, and people were worried that the project might be undermined. And actually, we went out to the market and we went to find third-party data, and we were able to do everything that we were looking to do off the back of the third-party options as well. So those would be my key takeaways and my key recommendations when it comes to data. Think small and think external.
Love it. Thanks, Martin, for that. We also have a great question on multi-party use cases from Robert. So let me ask it to all of you. Would love your respective perspective on that question. Are there AI, ML opportunities and use cases initiatives that could involve like a NAV Canada, an air traffic controller, a carrier, for example, like Air Canada, as well as aircraft manufacturers? Examples are given: Bombardier, Airbus, Boeing, and one or more of the airport authorities. Like, what's your perspective on a joint ML AI use case for that aviation ecosystem? Shavin, can you go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I mean, I think that's where we want to go, and we're already actively trying to do some of that work. We have multiple partnerships and collaborative analytics projects started up, but it's really for us focusing on that first level of AI, which is around assistance and decision support. Martin touched on augmented and autonomous on the other question, but we're really focusing on the first part, because can we even get that right before we try and do something more complex? And that brings people together and sets a foundational base for us to be able to do things in a more advanced way. So definitely an opportunity there. And to Cody's point as well and his question, they're all related. Maybe eventually we'll get to that point, but right now we're really focused on level one, artificial intelligence and assisted intelligence.
Sounds good. Anke, your perspective on a multi-party ML use case?
Definitely, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. With the acceptance project I mentioned, I mean less with other industry players here, but we had funding through Scale AI, and we worked with a freight forwarder to help us develop the solution. So it comes from a customer perspective. So as we move forward, we want to make sure that these use cases are involving all the different players within the aviation ecosystem.
Love it. Martin?
Yeah, I'll give you a very specific use case and a very strategic use case, net zero. Net zero is the existential challenge of our industry. It's also the existential challenge of our planet. It is the most fundamentally strategically challenging focus which we have within aviation. And in that use case, one of the challenges we have in terms of net zero, we have a pathway to net zero in aviation, but the reality is the dial shifters, the big initiatives that are going to drive the real change and drive the emissions down, sustainable aviation fuel, alternative propulsion, electric aviation, etc. They are 15 years to 20 years away from scale and from making the meaningful difference. The reality is, between now and then, the biggest thing we can do is to basically fly as efficiently as we possibly can. We should be ruthlessly focused as an industry on minimizing waste within the aviation ecosystem. That basically means minimizing holding stacks. That basically means minimizing inefficiencies in how we land aircraft. And I saw just congratulations to Toronto Pearson and Nav Canada. Just this week, they've just announced a new procedure into Toronto that minimizes waste on the arrival into the airport. But the role of data in enabling that collaboration is critical. We already have an ecosystem in aviation that there is a universal language around delay. Nobody disputes delay in aviation because we've got a common way of measuring it, and then we've got a common way of analysing it. From a net zero point of view, we need to unite around fuel burn and emissions in exactly the same manner. And that should be our focus over the next 10 years. And we need to do that as an ecosystem. If we do that as an ecosystem, that buys us the time to do all the big, genuine transformation technologies that will achieve our net zero goals.
Fantastic, Martin. I think we're going to leave it to that, that great call to action to think about net zero and our joint efforts, how they can help us with those efforts. I want to thank Shavin, Anki, and you, Martin, for your contributions to this panel. Diane, thank you for kicking us off today. Learned a lot from you, subject matter experts, on both what is being done in AI in aviation, but also how it's being done and perspective, things we can expect for the future. Thanks again to the four of you. I would love to get some of your feedback on the quality of this webcast, any ideas that you have for us. We'll give you a minute to complete our quick poll. And the panelists cannot vote, just in case you were wondering, Anki, Shavin, and Martin. All right. Well, just a minute for me to share with you our next event. We're going to stay in the air. Our next event is going to be about AI in aerospace. We're going to talk about the Gravity Challenge together with StatsCan, who launched this challenge. So for those of you who may not be familiar, one of the ways you can solve some of your business problems through data, advanced analytics, and machine learning is by opening a competition and allowing people from different organizations across the world to compete and try to solve your business problem. So together with StatsCan, some of our Deloitte team members, and also a company from Italy called Latitudo 40, which processes satellite imagery, we'll talk about AI as applied to space exploration. So we do look forward to seeing you at our next event or any of the future webcasts you see on the screen. If you have any ideas for our AI Institute for future webcasts, we'd love to hear them. Again, a big thank you to our panelists today, Anki, Shavin, Martin, and Diane. I wish you all an excellent evening or afternoon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.